let's get started here. I'm going to share my screen, and we'll dive into what I'm so excited to share about with you today. And what I want you to get a sense of is what in the last month I started calling Wave 2 of Agile. This has been going a lot longer with my efforts, with other people's efforts in the Agile community. And it's really, I'd see it like in retrospect, there's an emergent pattern that's showing up in our community that's very important for us to be successful in bringing Agile to the world and getting results, getting success in organizations. So I'd like to start by listening. And my first question is, where are you? So you can just use this map to indicate where you are in the world. Of course, this webinar is being brought to you by my partner and host, Adventures with Agile. So I expect to see a lot of people from the United Kingdom, but there may be people from other parts of the world, as I've let other people in my social media know about this. So if you can just share, where are you on the map? And you can go to your web browser and go to this polev.com/orgs. There's a URL right there, polev.com/orgs. You can go to that URL and click on share. Where are you in the world right now? So let's just take a moment of that. We're going to use polev.com several times. So it's really very important that you pop up a browser and have this going, because we're going to use this to for you to not only share with other people on the call, but also for you to reflect on your own situation. So we see a number of people from the UK. I'll give this a few more moments for people to open up their browsers. Of course, there's no login required. You can just go there and enter your information. Okay, so I've seen 2 responses. I'm not sure whether there's a technical challenge for people, or maybe people are calling in on their phones and can't open up their browser, but we'll continue, and hopefully that'll get working for you as we go through the call. So about myself, my name is Michael Sahota. My organization is Agiltrix, where our tagline is high performance redefined. So it's about getting to high performance, getting to results in organizations in a way that's different, a way that's very unique. So I've been in IT for 20 years, 15 years of Agile. In the last 10 years, I've really been in this place of looking at culture, looking at leadership, and actually including looking at myself for how do we actually bring Agile to organizations in a way that works, that gets the results we're hoping for. About 5 years ago, I wrote my book, An Agile Adoption and Transformation Survival Guide, working with organizational culture. And the intent of this was to stop us from causing damage in the Agile community, to help point us to a healthier way of working. And I'm a certified enterprise coach with the Scrum Alliance. I'm a certified Agile leadership educator with the Scrum Alliance. I'm currently spending most of my time doing training on a worldwide basis. And as you can see from the bottom, I'm a frequent speaker at Agile conferences. So some people see me as a thought leader in the community, especially around culture and leadership. So let's just take a moment to look at Agile in organizations. What's actually happening? So I'd say that I'd argue that Agile is an incredible success story. We see Agile embedded all over the world in various different organizations, because software runs business, and Agile is how people see as the best way to run software. So I'd say there's been a huge, huge, huge success. However, not all is well. Not all is well. And there's been a lot of depth of spread of penetration with Agile, but perhaps not as much success as we'd like to have seen. So let's just check in with you. I'll ask you to go to this polev.com/orgs URL and ask you, how well is Agile working at your organization or organizations? Are you getting the full benefits? So I'd like you to just go to this poll and just share from 1 to 10. What are you seeing here? Like, Agile's had this huge spread, but are you seeing the level of success that you'd like to, that people are really, understanding the Agile mindset and so on? What are you seeing out there? So right now we're seeing a mix of responses. Thank you for responses. We'll keep this poll open for another 10 or 15 seconds. People have a chance to interact and engage to see what's happening out there. So if you're on the lower middle side, this is normal. We see that Agile challenge is actually fairly commonplace. So it's wonderful to see some people are getting some very, very deep success, and some people are getting partial success. That's great to see. And for those of you who are finding a lot of challenge, this is actually all too frequently becoming very, very normal. We're going to talk about how do we move through that. How do we move forward in the typical organizational context that we're seeing? So what I'd like to do is check in with you with what are your biggest challenges with Agile? So again, pollev.com/org is the URL. This kind of poll is different from the other ones. This one is one where you can upvote other people's things. So if you see someone else's response in the list, you can type in your own response. Or if you see someone else's response, you can upvote it. So we'd like to see if there's any congruence with the callers about what are the challenges that you're seeing in your organizations. So please take a moment to type in the challenge you're seeing, or once we start seeing answers appear here, you can upvote other people's answers using your phone or browser. So the first one I see here is getting buy-in from the business to fully commit to adopting Agile principles. Yeah. So somehow, we have this challenge in organizations of business being separate from IT. We don't see ourselves as one company. And I see another challenge here. Senior management thinks Agile is something teams do. Yeah, sometimes this is actually quite common, that Agile's something that gets installed to fix the people on their team so they do proper work. And even interestingly enough, the one about adopting Agile principles, right? So when we talk about principles, we're going more than just practices. We're saying there's something deep about Agile in the principles and the mindset that is challenges. We're having a hard time with that in organizations. We see this people who lose power as you move away from command and control. Yeah, so that's interesting. A lot of what we see with Agile, especially with Scrum, is when we introduce it, we tell managers, okay, you no longer have a job. You're going to leave the team alone, which, to my understanding, is kind of very not very mature Agile advice to give organizations, to take the most important people who have the most knowledge about what's happening and tell them they no longer have a role. That seems like probably not aligned with the Agile principle of respecting people. Although somehow we need to help them because sometimes their behaviors are what's actually preventing us from reaching this Agile mindset. It's a very, very important topic. And we'll perhaps explore that during Q&A. So yeah, if you could upvote other answers you're seeing here that resonate with you. We're seeing other answers about command and control, more about command and control. Yeah, so a lot of things about management leadership. So we're going to be digging into that, about how can we actually approach that and tackle that. But let's get started or continue on exploring about where Agile is right now. So spread all over the world, but we're not getting the success we'd like. We're seeing significant challenges. So I guess the thing I'll say to you is you're normal. It's okay. When we look at the version 1 survey, State of the Agile, I feel there's like fantastic research that we have access to. If you haven't read through this, I'd encourage you to read through this. This is what's happening in the world around Agile. This is 50,000 teams, thousands of companies. And people are reporting, 63% of response reporting that the company philosophy or culture is at odds with core Agile values, right? That somehow there's this lack of experience with Agile methods, this Agile way of doing things. And that, this is actually the really interesting one, that 45% seems there's a lack of management support. Well, the part that I don't get is, if managers are supporting it, why are we doing it? If managers don't support it, why are we doing it? We shouldn't be doing things that managers aren't supporting. Otherwise, it's doomed to failure. And how are we creating this general organizational resistance to change? We're doing it because we're bringing Agile into organizations, and we're having change programs that are creating this resistance. Why are we annoying people? Like, let's stop annoying people, because that's not Agile. Agile is about empowerment, freedom, letting people, bring their best every day. And if we're creating resistance, we're actually disengaging people. We're actually not doing what Agile is actually all about. So I feel like there's a wake up we need in our industry to stop creating this. We're the ones creating this. So how do we stop? Well, when we think about stopping, we can look at what is Agile? Well, Agile's on one side, it's Agile Practices and Doing Agile. On the other side, we have the Agile Mindset or Being Agile. So this is coined via Bob Hartman came up with this concept of doing Agile versus being Agile. But the Agile Mindset is this fundamentally different thing. And when we think about like the core of Agile, we know from the way the Agile Manifesto was created, it wasn't about the practices or doing Agile. It was actually about this other thing, this mindset, this way of being, this philosophy. And that's actually the core of Agile that gives the value, gives this new way of being that's confusing and causing trouble because we're not able to help people with this fully. We've seen so much success, and this is why Agile's all over the world, about the practices and doing Agile. But the Agile mindset of being Agile somehow seems elusive. We're not really fully able to get the success we'd like to have here. So when I talk about wave 2 of Agile, we got to talk about what's wave 1. Well, what's wave 1? So my understanding, and this is the model I'm sharing with you today, is wave 1 is about the concepts and ideas of Agile. It's about the concepts and ideas. So it's about, hey, why don't we do things a different way? What does that different way of working look like? Wouldn't it be nice if we all collaborated and learned? It's about the ideas. And in wave 1, we teach people about the Agile mindset. We talk to them, we say, well, the Agile mindset's this, it's respect, it's collaboration, whatever. Different people have different understandings of exactly what that means. But we teach people, we tell them about this. It's a telling, it's a sharing. We might even try to give them some experiences around it. And somehow we're not succeeding as much as we'd like to. We've seen some success, but generally we're not having the Agile mindset show up in organizations. Otherwise, we'd be able to reach these leaders and have them show up with the Agile mindset. And Agile would just be flourishing right now and slowly succeeding, but it's not. So there's some sort of challenge around this. And I'd say wave 1 itself has had incredible success of bringing the ideas of Agile, the practices, the mindset to the world. But there's something that we need to do beyond this. And that's what I call wave 2 of Agile. It could be called living Agile. It could be called being Agile. And it means that it's not just about talking about it. It's actually about living it in our own being. It's not about talking about collaboration. It's living collaboration. It's not talking about learning and growth and telling people how important it is. It's modeling learning and growth. So this is what I'm inviting you to in this webinar, is to look at yourself, your approach to change in organizations, and consider whether it's part of wave 1 or wave 2. Is it about telling or is it about modeling? So we'll unpack, what does this actually mean? Well, let me tell you my story. So I was working for many years as an Agile coach, and then I realized that the leader was the limit for how far Agile could go into an organization. It depended on the mindset or the consciousness of the most senior leader, whether it was dealing with a manager, a director, a vice president, a CEO, whoever, whatever their consciousness was, that's how far Agile could go. So if they're very open, they're ready to trust people, they were good at building other leaders around them, they built up their people, then Agile could go very, very far. And what I noticed is that I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't getting the results I wanted in helping these organizations. I was feeling challenged. I wanted to help them more. And I realized the only way I could help them more is to help these leaders grow, to help them show up differently, to really understand the Agile mindset, to show up in a different way of being. And then I looked at myself in the mirror. I said, well, Michael, are you able to help them? Are you actually modeling the thing that you want to help them get? And I looked at myself and I had to say, no, I'm not. The truth was, at that time, I was a well-intentioned asshole. Like, I could not actually help them because I wasn't modeling the behaviors myself that I wanted them to adopt. I could tell them, but that telling people to do things that we're not doing ourselves, it doesn't work. So at that point, I set out on this journey to grow myself, to change how I show up, so that I could live Agile, so I could model the behaviors that I wanted to see happening around me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. So the Agile mindset, when you want to have this showing up in organizations, in teams, with leaders, it starts with us. It starts with us and our behavior and modeling this different way of being. So I'm going to help unpack what that means. So Mahatma Gandhi, great sage, said, Be the change you want to see in the world. And this is the creed that he lived and was able to free India from British rule and create a democracy that stands in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. So it's not about telling. Wave one is about telling. Wave two is about living this mantra of living agile. Instead of, and thinking that the way to bring about the agile mindset in the world is to live it ourselves, to model it, to show people how it's done, and inspire people to operate in that way. So let's take a look at ourselves. Let's just check in with ourselves. So when we look at ourselves, there's two parts to it. There's the individual part and there's the how we approach organizational change part. So, here's a checklist for living agile. I'd like you to think about how you're showing up, right? Just think, am I awesome at collaborating? Like, my story here is, I noticed my growth journey is like, I could talk to people about collaboration, I could teach collaboration, but I wasn't really good at being a team member myself, right? Like if other people on the team graded me and saying, how good a team member is Michael? Yeah, he's really competent, but he doesn't really listen, he doesn't celebrate others, he's not so good about receiving feedback, he thinks he's got all the great ideas himself, he doesn't really learn from others. So I'm just going through the list here, right? Some of the key characteristics it's not a comprehensive list, there are many characteristics we write down, but these are some key ones that we can use as a checklist for ourselves. So to reflect, where are you on these things? Are you awesome at these things? Are you modeling how to do these things for others? So let's just go to a poll and just check in with you. How well are you doing in living agile, and collaborating and listening and celebrating others, learning from others, listening to their ideas, receiving feedback and growing from them? How well are you doing right now? Sure, seeing some poll results starting to come in, some 6s, some 8s. Again, please go to pollev.com/orgs on your browser. Yeah, so moving on your screens, you can see pollev.com/orgs. So I'm asking a request here to share the link via message. So I'm going to stop my screen sharing for a moment, and just in the chat window, type pollev.com/orgs. So everyone has that URL. You can just go that one. Someone else has typed it in there already. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'll go back to sharing the screen so we continue with our poll. So if you just let's go back to Keynote. Here we go. Share screen. Play. So go back to this live poll. So we're seeing lots of growth opportunities. So a lot of honesty there from some people. Thank you so much. And we're seeing lots of people, and this is so good. This is what I love about our community. There's so many people who are embracing this part about living agile in how we do things. And I have a courage activity for you. Is if you ask the people you work with, people around you, whether it's your home, whether it's at work, ask them to share this list with them and ask them, how well are you doing, and see what their scores are. Because there's a psychological proof that we always rate ourselves higher than other people would rate ourselves, right? So we have this, we think we're better at something than we already are. So I encourage you to take whatever level you're at and actually just check around with others to see if they share that sense. But either way, I'm still just delighted to see that, and this is what I love about our community. There's so many people interested in developing and growing themselves. It's wonderful to see this. And it's so good to see that people believe they have so much room to grow. I'm in the same boat. I got lots of room to grow. So let me continue. Okay, sorry, there's some sort of problem here. I can't see my screen because the Zoom window's up. There we go. So the reason I've chosen this slide, this background, this photo of this path, is that living agile is a journey. It's not like a one and done. It's like, hey, today I'm living agile, yay! It's like, it's not like that. It's a path that we are committed to say, look, I desire to act in a way that will support this agile way of working and model it in how I behave. I've been working at this for years and years and years, and I'm still on my journey. And I'll say more about something that happens in a moment. So when I think about time, this is me. living agile, that my level of effectiveness in helping leaders, helping teams, helping organizations really move towards the full benefits of Agile, the Agile mindset, that as I've been living Agile, my effectiveness has been increasing. And what are some of the things that I've done to move in the direction of living Agile for myself? And everyone's going to have a unique path because we're all unique individuals. I just want to share some things that I've done to give you a sense of what I've done to invest in myself and how I'm showing up. Before I do this, here, you guys can see in this top corner, like the star on the horizon for myself is acting as a role model, is being the change I want to see, acts as a role model for what amazing Agile looks like, what amazing Agile behavior looks like, what does amazing collaboration look like, what does amazing learning look like, and so on. So one thing is meditation. I started a meditation practice as a way of centering myself, because how we are in the moment shapes everything, how we perceive the world and how we interact with the world. So it's been very important for me to have a practice to ground myself and get clear. Other people do other things like exercise and so on as a way to get clear than many things. This is a top practice that top executives do because they know it gets the benefits, gets the results of helping them be in a very capable, powerful place. Another one is personal development, like looking in the mirror, looking at myself. And this is by talking to others about how I'm showing up, really being open to feedback, going to personal growth retreats. And again, there are many, many different kinds and beautiful ways for growing in the world. And some of them are professional programs, some of them are more new agey type things. It doesn't really matter what path you go for. It's really about the investment in growing yourself. The other thing that I've been doing for the last several years is studying consciousness in India. And it's actually a lot more than just studying consciousness. It's actually, being an intensive training program that's having the experts in consciousness worldwide support me in shifting my consciousness and how I'm showing up, so that I can show up as the leader that I want to be, to help leaders become who they can be, so they can create amazing environments for the people around them. So that's been a very, very substantial part of my growth and development program. Another thing that's been just extraordinary is being coached. And I actually had someone coaching me full time in my training rooms, working with clients, so that in live and real time, I get feedback on where I was succeeding, where I wasn't, and when I was being triggered, when I was not actually in alignment with how I wanted to be behaving. And that's been like a truly extraordinary transformative experience for me. So to say that we value learning, but that we don't actually have mechanisms in place for getting expert guidance and feedback on a regular basis, means that there's still room for growing more. So these are some things that I've done. I'd love to hear now, what are the things that you're doing? So this is a chance for doing a share back, because I'm sure there are people on the call who are doing some amazing things. So sharing either like a program you're in or a practice you're using for yourself, for growing yourself personally, so that you can more clearly model the Agile mindset or live Agile, or become part of Agile, wave 2 of Agile, and be that meditation. That's great. So again, you can upvote these. So if you see someone else put meditation, you do that as well. Just scroll down in your browser, polyev.com/org is the URL. Working with a coach, that's great. Other people are doing that as well. So probably help not here to have more entries of meditation, but to just upvote the ones that are there. Let me see if I can hide one of these. So continuous personal development. Continuous personal development, that's fantastic. It'd be great if you can say what specific things you're doing. I'm going to exercise to refocus myself. That's fantastic. Talking with others, I imagine getting feedback. Great. Let's take another 10 to 15 seconds, people, to share. And again, what we're talking about here is not really about knowledge, not really about skills. It's about how we show up. Right? So we have learning more in Agile. That's a great way to grow yourself. But knowledge reading and our actual behaviors are somewhat different things. What I'm talking about here with Wave 2 is not about knowing things. It's not about knowing about collaboration or knowing collaboration models. It's actually about being a collaborator when working with others and modeling that in how we do things. Continuous personal development. Wonderful. Receiving feedback, self-awareness. Yeah, fantastic. That's so good. It's so good to see people are doing things. So these are the kind of things that are important for us to focus on, for us to really live wave 2 of Agile, of modeling behaviors. And again, I'll just mention the caution here that things like reading are helpful, but what we actually need to have growth and show up in the moment in a certain way is that we actually shift our behaviors, right? I know that, some people like, Charles Duhigg and that book about habits, we're talking about actually behavior change and change how we show up. So it's not about having more knowledge, it's about being in a different way. Wave 1 was all about the knowledge, the information, and so on. And we still need that, of course, but wave 2 is much more about teaching people, showing people through modeling a different way of being. So let's shift now to the organizational view of wave 2 of Agile. What does this mean when we look at modeling and living Agile in an organization and how we approach organizational change? So the reminder here is be the change you want to see in the world. So it means that everything we do when working with organizations, we're modeling an Agile way of being. We're living, the Agile manifesto or the spirit of Agile in how we undertake change in our organizations. So I'm going to go through what I've seen is the single most important awareness and understanding. And what I'm going to go through is give you a trap and then what the Agile way of approaching change in organizations actually is. So the first trap is just so exciting. I'm just so excited to share this list with you. Is push, right? It's pushing change, making things happen. And the alternative to this is, of course, pull. And we know that, one of the fundamental bases of Agile, conceptually, philosophically, and so on, is pull. That teams pull the work that they want to do, that we don't force things in the system. Henrik Niebuhr has a wonderful example of, you don't force more paper into the photocopier to get it to go faster. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Photocopier's going to pull pages as it's ready to print them. So that's probably the most important trap. So I'd invite you to consider where in your changes you might actually be falling the trap of pushing. And sometimes our organizations are telling us to push to make an Agile rollout plan or so on. The other trap is to sell or convince. How do I get the managers to want the Agile mindset? How do I convince them they should be learning about the Agile mindset? How do I convince them they should be behaving differently? How do I tell people they should be using Agile? Like, this kind of thinking is not Agile. In Agile, we invite. Saying, hey, there's this really cool stuff. You want to learn about it? That's Agile. When we sell, when we try to convince, we're actually pushing. We're falling in the trap of not letting people take what they're ready for when they're ready for it. So this is a huge, huge, huge trap that I see again and again. People, when they realize this, that they're falling this trap, there's a huge shift in how effective they are when they start moving to the Agile way of being. And what I'd like you to pay attention to before you go through the remaining items with your own behavior with this is that it's much more valuable if you just have an awareness of yourself falling the trap. Just having awareness of not falling the trap, you'll automatically just start picking green list behaviors. Say, well, ooh, if I can't sell, what am I going to do? Oh, okay, I get it, right? Because it's not really about learning new behaviors. It's more about unlearning the trap behaviors that we do because of the families you grew up in, conditioning in society, through education system, and so on. And we're so used to push and sell and convincing in our society that it just becomes an automatic behavior for us. We don't even see it. So that's my invitation. Just notice if any of these things are going on with you. The other trap is to challenge. And the alternative there is to ask. So rather than challenging someone when you don't agree, saying, hey, what's going on there, right? It's tied in with this notion of curiosity, of learning and growth, right? If we're really in a learning mindset, we're going to be going, oh, we don't agree about this. I wonder what's going on, right? But this is a shift. We're so used to just responding, challenging, telling people, some of us are taught we need to have like intense debate to get to great outcomes. Well, no, we need to get a shared pool of understanding to get to great outcomes. Don't make, drive, which we often see, how do we make all our teams agile by such and such date? How do we drive agile into the organization? And the alternative to that is inspire. Like, how do we I mean, Agile is about getting engaged people, passionate, motivated teams. Well, how do we do that? Well, we inspire them. We share some stories. We get them excited about something. We say, hey, there's this really cool stuff. Do you want to hear about it? Oh yeah, here it is. Wow. Do you guys want to do this? We invite. It's not about forcing. The last trap is telling. Hey, you guys have to do this. You guys have to be agile. You guys have to restructure. You have to do this. The other alternative is to co-create. This thing, hey, well, we'd like to be more successful here, right? Okay, great. How do we do that? And co-create the future that we want for the organization. This is how, at an organizational level, we can live agile. And I'm not talking about fluffy bunny stuff here. This is the hard work of leadership in our own behavior that's needed to get lasting results. And this is the growth we need to fully live agile in how we approach organizational change. It's really hard. It's so easy. I mean, anyone who's been a parent knows how easy it is to tell your kid to do something, but to really listen, to sit, to inspire, to work with them, to let them take what they need when they're ready for it, that's a lot harder, right? So let's just check in with you. How have you caused damage with Agile? Like, what are the things that you've done in your Agile change initiatives? And we're thinking about stuff from the trap list, the driving, the telling, the evangelizing, the making, the pushing. What are some of the things that you've done? So this is the cool part where it's an anonymous poll, so no one knows it's you, right? So again, this is like an upvote poll. So I think you can vote out for other things. So pushing too hard for results. So if you're thinking about that one, too much selling, so please upvote those ones. If those are true for you as well, if you cause damage that way. And so we're getting a little bit of a confession booth here, a chance to say, oh yeah, it's true, I did it. And like, it's okay, like pretty much everything you guys are gonna put here, I've done all of these things and more. I've caused so much damage with Agile, and that's how I learned, right? And what I'm giving you here is a hope that you can take some of what I'm sharing with you, all my hard lessons learned, so you can avoid the mistakes I've made. Okay, so let's see here. Too much of selling, pushing too hard for results, trying to create a change process when the business wasn't ready for the best practice model. Yeah, so yeah, trying to create a change process when the business is ready. Well, the business is not ready. How's it gonna work? Judging prematurely. Yeah, I've done that too. What else do we have here? Being arrogant and pushing people who are less au fait with Agile. Yeah, sure. I've been very arrogant and pushing people, judging them, saying, "Are you guys?" Da da da. Right? This is how we're conditioned in society. It's not our fault, or society's fault, but we have a place of choice of what do we want to do about it, right? So we know this is going on. So this is where I'm inviting you to be a place of choice with your own life, with your own work with Agile, about how do you want to show up? Do you want to model Agile and get extraordinary results and actually create lasting Agile in organizations? Or do you want to stick with wave one and lead into the challenges that we see? This is what I see as the main choice here. There's another one here, not relating to key influencers at whatever level they're at. Yeah, it turns out people pretty much understand the first line of the manifesto. Agile is about individuals' interactions or people over process. Well, it turns out managers are people too. And somehow we seem to have forgotten that. In our community, we tend to judge them, label them, see them as the problem, put them on our impediment lists. But treating leadership, and this is one of the things that I teach people in my trainings, is that like really, like leaders are the holders of the system. They have the power. And how can it work if they're not leading the change? We'll say a bit more about this in a moment. So let's just check in. Where have you been rock stars? When real changes happen? When? What are the things you've done? Perhaps from the green list, the inviting, the co-creation, the listening. What are the things that you have done to foster real, lasting success and change? So again, this is like an upvote list. So if you see someone else's response, please upvote that so we can see what commonality there is on people on the call. Created communities, wonderful. Asking for feedback and meaning generally. Yeah, so asking for like, hey, how's this working? Like, how can we make this work for you? What does it need to look like for you to be looking in? Co-designed change as part of the work, small J curves. Yeah, co-design, so co-creating. After team building, celebrating small successes or accomplishments. So celebrating, yeah, that's brilliant. Love to see the celebrating. Improving collaboration with offshore teams. Yeah. Less of an enforcer, yeah. Yeah, so when we're in an enforcer role, right, I mean, by definition, we're pushing, right? We're making, right? Agile's kind of about freedom, not about making people do stuff, right? It's about creating a space and letting people do amazing work. So creating communities, asking for feedback and meaning it genuinely, having open conversations and listening without a preconceived answer. This is like huge, this one. Open conversations, listening. Listening is actually a key way of being to get to amazing outcomes. And we often fall in the trap of evangelizing, of being attached to Agile and telling, oh, you should do it this way. Agile's about this, instead of listening like, oh, what do you want? How can we make this successful for you? Yeah, beautiful. You guys are really getting a lot of this. I'm so glad to see people have already discovered some of the ways of getting great success out there. That's so wonderful to see that. So I want to share one very concrete, specific thing. So I've already shared with this red list and green list with you of the traps and the Agile, living Agile, as a way of diagnosing your own behavior. But what I want to give you is like a larger frame that I've been sharing probably I've been doing this for many years, but consciously sharing this understanding for the last probably 6 months or so. What I call consciously approaching Agile. So the model here is essentially, if we want to have Agile in organizations, and it could be Agile, it could be innovation, it could be employee engagement, it could be DevOps, it could be Lean, it could be whatever it is that we want to introduce that's of benefit to the organization to help move into a more powerful way of being and operating in the world. What we're seeing here is that when we try to introduce Agile, often the organizational context and the culture isn't ready for Agile. Like the mindset isn't there, the organizational culture isn't there. So in consciously approaching Agile, rather than starting from Agile, we start by looking at the organizational context and the culture and preparing it so that it's the right kind of place for Agile. So it's like working on the mindset first is a good way to think about this. We start looking at how are we set up in terms of our way of being, in terms of our structures, our policies, are we actually set up for Agile? So instead of starting with Agile on teams, looking at the leadership, looking at the organizational policies, the ways of being in the organization, and starting to shift those. So the question is, well, how do we actually shift those? Well, the only way those shift is when the leaders actually start modeling those behaviors, right? So it's kind of like if you're interested in getting Agile on teams, well, the way you do that is we get the leaders modeling the behaviors, the leaders modeling the collaboration, the listening, the co-creating. When that happens, they're going to create an organizational cultural context where people can naturally move to an Agile mindset. It just becomes a very natural thing when we see the leaders modeling it. And I've been tracking Agile and my own engagements with other people's engagements all over the world. And unless and until the leaders actually start modeling a new way of working, the Agile mindset cannot actually enter the system. So some environments we're very blessed to have very conscious leadership where they already model things aligned with the Agile mindset. They're already living Agile. In those contexts, those companies, those very few companies, Agile can just be dropped in and works like a charm. The vast majority, 95% of it, everyone else, we're in this boat where the leaders are not living Agile, they're not modeling it. So what I'm proposing for you is an approach where starting with the leadership about how they model Agile, how they live Agile, before trying to introduce Agile to teams and lower down in the organization. Because when we do that, we know we just end up with the version 1 results. We end up with all this conflict. Because the leaders aren't on board and they're not really, if the leaders aren't going to collaborate, how are we really going to get collaboration down on the ground floor? We might get little pockets here and there, but we're not going to get it overall. So the question is, well, how do we do that with leaders? Well, turns out it starts with you and me. Like, we actually need to model fully the behaviors in how we show up, how we interact with the leaders, how we approach organizational change. And until we actually live Agile, we cannot actually get the success that we desire. So all of us over here want this Agile in the circle. We want Agile to be in the organization, on teams. This is the path to get it. We need a different way of approaching it that's leadership focused, leadership first. I know there's some other ways to do this. I know some contexts you can have a radical change in structures where the leaders have no choice but to change their behaviors to get that mindset shift in them. That's rather what I'd see as a rather challenging way to do it, for much more caring, compassionate ways. And what I'm inviting you to do is to look at how you're showing up, how you're interacting with leaders. Like, I know one block that I've worked through myself in working with leaders is some of the judgments I had about leaders, some of the bad work experience I had with bosses, with managers, and so on, and clearing away some of those judgments so that I could actually see them with fresh eyes and look at them as actually very caring individuals that are just trapped in the system that's causing them to behave in these ways, and inviting them to a place of choice about what do they want for their organization. So this is what I wanted to share with you about consciously approaching Agile, is really talking about how we show up as leaders, how we live Agile ourselves, is directly relevant for us creating leaders around us, whether it's the leaders that we're reporting to get a larger organizational shift towards the Agile mindset, or the people who are on our teams. Like, everyone who reports into us, we're really living Agile. We're trying to build leaders at all levels, trying to build a learning organization where people are co-creating, co-leading into the future. So in closing, I'd like to share a couple of things. So this is wave 2 of Agile. This is what I'm inviting you to consider about and understand this, and invite you to participate in, perhaps more deeply than you may already have been. So wave 1 is really about the ideas. Wave 2 is about being or living Agile in actually how we show up personally at a personal level, and how we approach organizational change. And that when we do this, we can see much, much more success. So I'd like to check in with you with this poll. I'm going to respond at pollev.com/orgs. I believe in living Agile, and I'm committed to growing myself. So let's just check what's alive out there. Seeing lots of strongly agree, some agree. We'll give another 10 seconds or so for this poll. So I'm delighted to see so many people strongly agreeing with the sentiment of living Agile. I think that wave 2 is about you, it's about me, it's about all of us collectively stepping up and saying, hey, it's about us. It's about how we show up. And that when we all collectively work together how we model Agile and live Agile, then we can shift this whole Agile community. I believe wave 1 is reaching the end of its lifespan. We actually need wave 2 to create a vibrant community. So please share this message. I invite you to share this with others, that the importance of living Agile and how we show up, and reflecting on our own behaviors. So thank you so much for listening. I'd like to share one closing slide before we go to Q&A. And it's this: no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. Thank you. So we'll go now to Q&A. So there's a Q&A section. Actually, I'll respond. There's some stuff via in the Zoom chat window. If leaders are key, can we work with any leader or just those who want to be helped? Well, so if we think about, thank you for that question first. So the question is, can we work with any leader or just those who want to be helped? So when we look at invitation or voluntary as a critical part of success, of actually a critical part of actually Agile, like none of us like somebody forcing us to do stuff. So, and like the plain truth of it is it just doesn't work. So if we want to be successful, if we want to actually honor what living Agile is, we only work with those who want to be helped. That's it. For the others who don't want to be helped, we actually probably, my recommendation is actually go look at our own behavior of how do we disconnect with them? What's going on with our relationship? It's Agile about individuals and interactions. What's going on with our interaction with them? You know, and maybe often when I do this and I go back and look at myself, there's a place where I go back and say, look, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that I've been like pushing you, evangelizing, not really listening to what you want. You know, I'm so sorry. Will you please forgive me? And I'd like to start again. You know, what's it really important for you? What are you trying to accomplish? Because I'd really like to help you. And when we do that and we're really honest about our own behavior, we can rebuild those relationships and turn those leaders who are resistant, who don't want to be helped, into those who are so excited to be working with us. There's another question here from Michael Wallen. Do you have a list of Agile leadership behavior or a list of, yeah, so I don't, so this is really funny actually. So it so happens that I teach a certified Agile leadership training all over the world. And people have these amazing transformational experiences, but it turns out I never actually tell people what Agile leadership is. Instead, what I do is I talk about high performance culture systems and talk about the kind of behaviors that we see there. I give people fragments, and you've gotten some of them here, things like listening, things like being able to be fully present with others, things about growing ourselves and modeling the behaviors we want. That's what I see. And really, for me, like amazing leadership is about looking at what my blocks are right now that prevent me from being the leader that I want to be and growing through those. Right, and on this call, I shared with some of the traps with you. So that's a great place to go look for reflecting on your own personal behavior. So now I'll flip over from the chat window, the question window. And I think I already answered this question. So we can work with any leaders. So I've answered that one. John Coleman asked, what about situational leadership? Example using Goleman's leadership styles. What is your position with tough conversations as we need it? So that's a fantastic question. So I'm not, well, I'll answer this in two parts. I think the model of leadership I subscribe to is probably broader than situational leadership. It's really about taking a step back and saying that a leader will at any moment do what's required of them. So sometimes a leader means having a difficult conversation. Sometimes it means taking a step back and listening. Sometimes it makes sense to just participate like a regular team member and collaborate and co-create ideas. That I think that having narrow definitions of what leadership is and isn't helpful. I think, you know, I'm sort of in this, you know, Agile school of, you know, keeping things kind of much broader and open. And in that school, it's like, well, amazing leadership is whatever is required in the moment to serve the mission, to move the group forward, to help grow leaders around us. That's what amazing leadership is. And it's whatever it takes to do that. So situational leadership can be very helpful in giving us some basic guidance and understanding or ideas around what that might look like. But I think I believe in a much larger frame than that. In terms of tough conversations, you know, oftentimes tough conversations means there's some sort of judgment there, you know, implicitly, or we're in some sort of charge where, you know, we're frustrated with someone's behavior or something like that. And, you know, really when we come from this place of pulling, of listening, it's more about learning and discovery. And when we come from that frame of learning and discovery of like, oh, you know what, your performances seems like how do you think your performance is going? Like from 1 to 10, and, you know, someone's performing very poorly, you can ask them and say, oh, that's very, very, very interesting, because, like, you know, the perception for myself and other people is that it's actually very much different from that. Like, what do you think's going on? Like, help me understand, right? And when we come from this place of curiosity and caring, like Agile's about people and caring about the person, we respond in very different ways to these things that are labeled as tough conversations or difficult conversations. That they're only difficult because we have an emotional charge around them. That when we actually clear ourselves, clear our own being, so that we can be in this place of living Agile, being curious, of caring about other people, we actually can respond very, very differently. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's actually a very, like, for me, I see living Agile as a very high bar, a very high bar that's being set, and I'm constantly learning and growing. Like, I'll give you an example. Like yesterday, I was teaching in a class, and it was at the end of day 2. I'll say I was tired, but I don't know if that's really the truth of it. But the truth is, I got triggered, and I started getting, like, you know, I was giving an answer, but with a lot of like anger and frustration from previous situations I had in the past that were related to it. and I got called on it. It was such a good experience because then I could share. And like when we come from this place of openness, caring, and curiosity, we actually get amazing, lasting outcomes, right? So yeah, so I totally believe in having the difficult conversations. In fact, that's actually the hallmark of an amazing leader, is that the conversations that need to happen are being had, and we're saying the thing that needs to be said. So it looks like anonymous attendee asked, I think what if I click answer live? Let me see what happens. So is Agile suitable for all types of projects? Or rather, what phase of a project is suitable for Agile? Let me see here. So what's going on with me right now is I'm thinking, okay, well, how does this relate to what I've been speaking about during this time? And I imagine it's somebody who's just recently joined the Agile movement. And so I say there's actually for me a clear answer for this. Agile is suitable in a project where people actually want to use it. In fact, when I do I often get brought in by companies to, or at least I did, I do the culture and leadership stuff now. But when I used to get invited in to do Agile training at companies, one of the things I tell the teams are, well, your management expects you to improve your operational performance, perform better. How you guys do that is totally up to you. It's your team. It's your decision what you want to do. I'm going to share some stuff that people use in the Agile school that they tend to find useful. It's up to you to decide what parts you want to use. Right? It's your decision. And when I do that, the uptake is so much higher. Like, I typically teach a Scrum-based model. Sometimes I use Kanban, depends on what the context of the team is. But the uptake is usually very, very high. Teams just go, oh yeah, of course it makes sense, because I'm not telling them and not making them. So the answer is Agile suitable at the type of project where people want to do it, where it feels like it's the right thing for them and it makes sense to them. So thank you for that question. Okay. The reason I asked the question is because everyone wants to get Agile. But the question is, does the project suits the Agile way of working? So for me, the Agile way of working, Agile is very broad. Agile is really about, if we look at the Alistair Coburn style of Agile, it's really about people getting together and talking and having a clear understanding of what they want to accomplish in a way that's aligned with a real business objective, to have real conversations. I think the biggest challenge we have in IT is about like a disconnect between business and technology, a disconnect between actual sort of day-to-day realities and the hopes and wishes of like when the release date is. And I see that Agile is really a way of fostering and bringing in the conversations about the truth and what's actually happening in organizations. So in terms of the types of organizations, of where it works better, it tends to work better where people are physically in the same location. And if you're not, you need to fly them together so they can actually get the connections and interpersonal relationships that build the trust that fuel the team and allow them to execute successfully. It tends to work better where teams have control over their technical environments. Often environments where they have less control over it makes it much more difficult. So thank you so much for that question. So are there any other questions people like to ask? We have a few more minutes before we close out the hour. Any other questions about living wave 2 or how this has worked out for me? Or okay, I'm not seeing any questions here. So I'll give it another 10 seconds. Okay, everyone, I'm going to close up the call now. Thank you so much for joining. I feel really privileged to be able to share this with you, that wave 2 for me is something that's emerged. It's like an emergent phenomenon. And I'm so delighted to have so many of you responding positively to being connected with that. Thank you so much for joining. Oh, wait, there's one more question. What strategy do I apply for pull? Oh, this is such an exciting question. What strategy to apply for pull? So pull will happen naturally when we stop pushing, right? The way to get to pull is actually just to look at where we're pushing things, pushing teams to do certain things, pushing Agile. And you know, the challenge is that we're so conditioned to this from growing up in certain types of family conditions, from being in school systems, we're constantly pushed and told to do things, pushed in society, made to do things. And really, our secret for letting go of pushing of pulling, of learning how to pull, is to stop pushing. And the way you can tell you're pushing is you may notice you have an agenda. If you have a desire for a specific outcome and you want a certain thing to happen. So I know when I work as an Agile coach, this is like true, it was like several years ago, and I'd really want the leaders to choose to look at culture, to look at their own behavior, and I'd really want them to do that, right? And I want them to do this so bad, I'd actually push it unconsciously through my behavior, through my language. I wasn't really in a place of letting them freely choose what they wanted. When we let people freely choose what they want, that's pull. And as they freely choose it and want it, then they'll pull it from us. Or I push advice. I tell people things without actually asking them. If you want a trick for pull, it's like, hey, would you like some advice now? Would you like to hear my perspective? When we ask those kind of questions, we can actually protect ourselves from falling the trap of push. So yeah, thank you for that question. There are times when stakeholders are not motivated enough. How do we manage these situations? Right. So probably other people on this call have situations where stakeholders are not motivated enough, right? So that's a push trap, right? Right there. They're not motivated enough. Well, enough means for getting a certain outcome. So it means we're pushing for a certain outcome and judging them that they're not motivated enough, versus observing like, oh, to get this kind of outcome, we need these kind of behaviors, and we're not seeing those kind of behaviors, right? Then we can go back and have a conversation. Well, look, what do you guys want? Do you guys want this to be successful? What kind of outcome do you want? Or before that, do you even want to have a conversation about what outcome you want? Do you care enough to spend an hour talking about this? When we ask these kind of questions, we can see into our own agenda, our own attachment. That's how subtle this is. So it requires careful attention. This is why it's good to get coaching or work in pairs, so you can help each other spot these kinds of behaviors, because it's very subtle. So we may think we're living agile, but you know, the truth is, and certainly the truth that I've experienced, is that it's so subtle how we can actually betray ourselves of our intention. So that's my invitation to you, is just really be careful. If you're getting into conflict, if you're getting into resistance at all, it's a clue that you're pushing. Because before there's resistance, there has to be a push. So again, my invitation here, watch your own behavior. If you're seeing resistance, it means you're pushing. You just need to look for where you're pushing. Okay. We're almost at the hour, so I'm going to wrap up with this last question. It's the last question I'll take. Are there any reference materials to read more on behaviors? That's a really good question. So I know in my certified Agile leadership training, we unpack this, we go into details so people can really get a body sense of what's happening with them. And I intend to have a book coming out this year to share a lot of those things. My last book's 5 years ago now, and there's been so much learning since then. In terms of places I go to look at behaviors, a lot of like coaching programs are helpful with this, because not just about coaching others, they start by looking at your own behavior. Perhaps some of the works of Charles Duhigg looking at habits would be good to look at what are some habits you can do to start trapping and noticing your own behaviors. I'm actually like not a great doing so great in the reference and suggestions category, so apologies for that. Like I really believe it's not just looking from a professional perspective, because these behaviors we have cut across all aspects of life, personal, professional, and so on. So it's really looking at how can we observe ourselves, whether through meditation or through other awareness practices of understanding how we're showing up. So thank you very much again, everyone, for joining. I wish everyone a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you so much.